This is the Betty Ford Center in Rancho Mirage, California, the most well-known chemical dependency recovery program in the country, probably the world. A major reason? Celebrities. Since 1982, when the center opened, Elizabeth Taylor, Mickey Mantle, and Gregory Harrison are among the many who have gone public, as Mrs. Ford did when she revealed her addiction to prescription drugs and alcohol in 1978. No one has ever been granted access inside to film the recovery process with the actual patients. Betty Ford and her staff agreed to let us in if we agreed to certain ground rules. With the full knowledge of other patients, I would go through the program for 2 days as if I were a real patient, without cameras. We agreed not to alter their regimented schedule, and when we began filming on the 3rd day, no patient would be identified without their consent. So now, for the first time, behind the closed doors of the Betty Ford Center. Many of us have an image of life on the inside of a drug treatment center, people shaking and sweating, isolated, scenes we've seen in the movies. This high-profile patient shared the same expectation.
I thought it was going to be like an institution. I expected to be met with a straitjacket and some Thorazine. But I found it to be totally the opposite.
At first glance, it is a perfect Palm Springs getaway, a resort-like setting situated on 12 manicured acres, which is in stark contrast to the emotional storm felt by the incoming patients. Actor Gregory Harrison, addicted to cocaine, hit rock bottom in 1987 before he entered the center.
I was in a separate room in my house from my wife and children, and my wife tells me now that she every morning would come in, and I'd be up all night. Of course, you don't sleep much on that drug. And she'd come in and expect to see me either overdosed or dead from hanging myself or something. She would look up to the rafters first when she opened the door. It was that bad.
Generally, patients stay for 28 days and live in one of 4 dormitories, each housing 20 people. The average cost of the program is $12,000. They're admitted either by calling directly or pre-admitted by a family member. This process is called intervention. It's a forced confrontation with the addict by those closest to them, the same way Betty Ford was confronted by her family.
I assumed that the White House physician knew what he was doing when he was giving Betty prescription after prescription. And we enjoyed a martini, and we enjoyed bourbon and water, and it got so that I knew something had to be done.
And there were a lot of tears and there were a lot of anger, but I could hear them saying they love you too much to let you go.
But ultimately, the decision to admit a patient to the center rests in the hands of a counselor, many of them recovering addicts themselves.
How long would a quart of vodka last? If you're drinking what you're drinking, a quart is going to go faster than that. I know a quart would last me a day. Oh, you too. Okay, so you're drinking a quart a day then. Even if the most famous person in the world would call right at this moment, it wouldn't faze because I'm talking to a drunk. I can identify with him and I can make him feel comfortable because of my own sobriety, which has been 26 years. And what happened when you tried to stop?
I used the last of my drug in the parking lot and took the little vial and threw it. My heart was pounding. I thought it would be hell.
Once they check you in, you're never alone. You're given extensive rules and regulations, then escorted to your room.
This is the living room area. You'll be doing some work in there, and you can relax down there with your peers.
Luggage is searched for drugs and anything containing alcohol. Even aftershave and cologne are removed. Some patients are so desperate, they'll resort to even drinking those. This is the room where I stayed. You'll notice there are no locks on any doors here. This is the bathroom. It's not luxurious, it's functional. You share it with your roommate. And in the room there are 2 twin beds. You each have a desk. It really reminds me of being in college again, but you'll notice that there are no TVs, phones, magazines, or even books, because those all allow you to isolate yourself.
Each 20-bed hall becomes like a family in and of itself, and so that the men and women from that unit eat together, live together. It's much easier to form some bonds and closeness with a group of 20 than if it was a group of 80.
To keep you close and emotionally connected, whenever you leave the dorm, you gather for the Serenity Prayer. Patients call it circling.
Grant me the serenity.
Accept things I cannot change. 6 a.m. wake up to 9:30 p.m. lights out. Therapy comes in all forms, from daily walks to intense classes or simple daily chores. If you're Gregory Harrison or Jane Doe, if it's sweeping, you sweep.
I like having to worry about that little spot on the floor, and gee, I wonder if that'll come up with Ajax. What a nice thing to have to focus on when you've been dealing with, am I going to live through this or am I going to die?
In addition to chores and therapy, the simple discipline of daily exercise, balanced meals, and regular bedtimes are not only mandatory, but essential for people who just days ago were out of control.
They haven't had much practice having structure in their lives. And so we provide that artificially by some pretty rigorous demands on them. Part of what we do in providing therapy is we have an expectation of responsibility. People are most apt to relapse if they're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
For 15 hours every day, your emotions are raw. You're forced to talk, so you're able to confront the pain, fear, shame, and anger the chemicals have covered up for years, sometimes decades.
My dad was alcoholic, not regular, but very angry alcoholic.
Although there is security to keep trespassers out, there are no fences to keep people in. On my first night, a patient in my dorm buckled under the pressure and disappeared into the night only 2 days after he had arrived.
You have to take these little baby steps. Can I really deal with the cravings and deal with the fears and deal with the mysteries of how to live drug-free? 1 minute at a time? 60 longest seconds you've ever known in your life?
If you make it to the end of the night, you're physically exhausted. During my 2-day stay, I tape recorded my thoughts after hours. Group therapy is the most intense part of this whole process, I think. And you bond with everyone in your group because you just live through these incredibly personal, heart-wrenching examinations of their lives. For the first time, patients allowed us to videotape their session, except for one high-profile person whose livelihood depended on his anonymity, who we'll call Earl.
But talk about how you jeopardized your relationship with your daughter.
We shared a lot together. We did a lot of things together.
When you were not drinking.
Right.
What was the most hurtful thing for her?
That if I loved her, how could I drive the car with her in it? You know, being under the influence. You know, how could I do that?
Did you do that?
Yes, I
Cindy?
did. I did do that, and I don't know how I did it either.
Slow down.
She became the mother. She would take care of me.
What is that like for you?
I took her innocence. I took her childhood. You know, she said to me, I'm only 14.
When you're sick with a disease like that, you think you're the only one in the world like that for so long. That's why you hide out. That's why you have such self-loathing. The more you find out that there are a lot of people like that and that they've all gone through similar stuff to what you're going through, and it takes a load off, takes the shame away.
How do you feel when you hear her relate her feelings about her daughter?
I feel the same things. I feel very sad. I can relate to her sense of helplessness. I have always prided myself on being able to control my emotions. I grew up in a family where emotions were not controlled, and I didn't like what I saw, and I learned very early.
What did you see?
I saw intense rage. I saw frightening anger, hatred, and fear. So it's been very difficult for me to access those feelings that were bottled up inside.
For an unrelenting 30 minutes, Rose Swearingen focused on Earl, hoping he was ready for that critical breakthrough.
Is there one thing that you'd like to share with your group?
I think...
No, don't think.
No, don't think, feel. I remember asking God to take me back to Him. I must have been 6 years old, 7 years old. It's the first time I've talked about it. I think I've ever told anyone about it.
In an hour and a half, 4 strangers became more honest than they'd been in a lifetime. For Earl, he was able to break through and began the process of healing.
My sobriety brought a lot of serenity into my life.
Betty Ford frequently lectures to the patients. I spoke with her after my 2 days inside with a better understanding of the center.
You chose not to just lend your name. You're hands-on.
That involvement has been really a lot of the background of my recovery. Because when you're helping someone else, you're really helping yourself.
It's scary walking in, but I must say, from being here for a few days, I think they are more frightened about leaving.
Coming in is the fear of what's going to happen to me, what are they going to do to me. Going out, they're going back to that world where they used him. Mm-hmm. And that is the scary part, because are they going to be able to use the tools and work the program that they have been working here? And we really prepare them very well for going out.
I just wonder why no one else has ever been allowed to bring cameras in and why you're letting us in.
We have felt it's very important for the public to realize the value of people looking at their lives and getting well and being able to turn them around and become valid, good citizens who can contribute to life.